Mayday here. 82, we have smoke in the cabin.
Track, final maintain.
Good evening and welcome to Galactic Terrors, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. Tonight for our May 2025 transmission, we have three fantastic readers joining us: Chris Ryan, Charles BAROUCH, and RANDEE DAWN. And of course, I am James Chambers, and with me is co-host Carol Gyzander.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to May. How did this happen? You know, you just close your eyes and the calendar goes flying by, you know, all those pages, tearing them off, throwing them over your shoulder. Welcome to May.
That's
Happy
it.
to be here.
Here we are. Welcome to you, all of you joining us tonight. If you're here for the first time, we're happy to have you. If you've been here before, welcome back. And you can follow Galactic Terrors transmissions by clicking like and subscribe on YouTube to get updates when we have a new broadcast coming up. And otherwise, you can look for us on the second Thursday of the month with new episodes of Galactic Terrors and occasionally other days in the month when we do some special episodes.
Yeah, we've been doing a few of those, you know, focusing on some work that our HWA New York chapter members are doing. And this is a perfect venue to do a little bit of a deep dive. So that's fun, too.
Absolutely. And if you want to really keep on top of what we're doing, you can join our newsletter, which goes out just 2 or 3 times a month. And it's a simple informational newsletter to let you know who, what, when, and where. We don't really get into why, but who, what, when, and where.
No clue why, but it seems like a good thing. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So how are you doing, Carol?
I'm doing well. Today, I'm in northern New Jersey, right in the New York City suburbs, and I got the lawn cut before a massive rainstorm. So all is good with me, you know. Can't beat that.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
It's the little victories.
Yes, I can check that off on the do list because, you know, if it wasn't on the do list and I did it, you know, I have to write it down so I can check it off. Yeah, That's how that works. Yeah. So there's some other fun things coming up. You know, it's only a month away until StokerCon.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little about it, Jim? Are you?
Yeah, I think most of our listeners and viewers are familiar with StokerCon at this point, the Horror Writers Association's annual convention. And this year it will be taking place in Stamford, Connecticut, June 12th to the 15th with some amazing guests of honor: Joyce Carol Oates, Tim Wagner, Paula Capppa, Scott Edelman, Adam Neville, and Gabby Triana. And a lot of the HWA NY people will be there. The HWA New England chapter, formerly the Connecticut chapter, is doing a bang-up job. We've got a ton of volunteers from that group who are doing amazing work, putting programming together, setting up author readings, getting the volunteers in line, setting up the dealer's room, and just planning what is looking to be a fantastic convention. So if you're in the area or not, you know, there's plenty of airports and train stations within reach of Stamford if you want to come from out of town. We hope we'll see you there in June.
Mm-hmm. I think that'd be terrific. Looking forward to that. And then there's a slightly smaller event coming up the following weekend out in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. It's the 2025 Author Expo. It's on June 21st. This is an event sponsored by the Pocono Liars Club and the Eastern Monroe Public Library. But the theme is really, really special. It's End Book Banning. and they're going to have some panels and displays and books available for purchase and signing. And I hope to be there, and a couple other people from HWA New York should be there. So if you're in the area, please stop by. I'll put the link in the chat in a minute. So
Yes, definitely. I think that sounds like a great event, and it'd be nice. People can catch up with you there.
yeah, that'd be fun. You know, it's always great to see some of the faces you see online. You know, it's fun to see them in person.
So I wanted to share a neat thing that I received in the mail not too long ago, and I don't know if I'm checking our chat, and I'm wondering if Nicholas Dyack is with us tonight. Nicholas and Michelle Brittany are great supporters of Galactic Terrors. So Nicholas, if you're listening tonight, go ahead and throw something in the chat. But Nicholas recently emailed me about this really cool thing that he's doing, where he's sending a postcard a day to people, just as kind of a fun exercise and a way to connect with people, I guess off and on, just sort of a point of connection. And so he asked me for my address, and I was so honored to be part of it. I got this really awesome Madrid postcard from Nicholas recently, and he wrote a nice message on the back.
Oh, cool. That's really neat.
Just a friendly, happy springtime, what's going on with your bad self kind of message. So thank you, Nicholas. I just wanted to give you a shout out for this awesome postcard, which is, really cool to receive. It's been a long time since I've actually gotten a postcard in the mail that wasn't a marketing gimmick.
That's most of the mail I get. I think that's wonderful. That's really terrific. Yeah. Oh, hey, we do have a question from Teal Glenn asking, will there be a virtual component to StokerCon? So
Well, of course, yes, there will be a virtual component to StokerCon. Before we talk about that, I just wanted to give it just finish giving a shout out to Nicholas and say,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's just the postcard was cool, but also Nicholas and Michelle do a great podcast called the HP Lovecast podcast. And if you get a chance, check it out. They've both been guests on Galactic Terrors, and Carol and I have occasionally been on the HP Lovecast podcast, and it's a really fun, very what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of curiosity. They love to dig into things and just ask interesting questions, of their guests and authors. So
yes, they do a terrific deep dive on the works that they do, which is really fun. And then you get to hear the author talk about it as well. So,
but to answer Teal's question, will there be a virtual component to StokerCon? Yes, you can sign up you can register if you are unable to attend StokerCon in person in Stamford. We are doing virtual StokerCon 2025 as well. This is strictly online, and it is for people who are unable for whatever reason to attend in person in Stamford. It is really a tremendous amount of content and access to programming for virtual attendees. There will be quite a few on-demand panels that have been recorded or are in the process of being recorded ahead of time just for virtual StokerCon. So these are virtual panels that will only be available in virtual StokerCon. And in addition, we'll be live streaming about, actually, I don't know how many panels, but upwards of 20 or 30 panels from Stamford, Connecticut. So if you're not in Stamford, you can still see some of the highlights. And one of the coolest things about a virtual StokerCon, now that we've been doing this since about 2021, is we're able to make available each year the recorded panels from the previous year. So now you not only get this year's panels and this year's live stream panels, but you also get access to panels recorded at or for StokerCon 2024 in San Diego, StokerCon 2023 in Pittsburgh, and so on. So there's, I think we go back to 2022 in Denver. So it's really a deep dive if you have the interest to get all of these great panels that have been part of the StokerCon experience for the last 4 or 5 years. And depending on your registration, you can get a copy of the souvenir book, delivered in the mail if you're a virtual attendee. So. Yeah, thank you. Good question, Teal.
Yeah, and I think that's terrific because you've heard me say before that StokerCon is my favorite convention of the whole year, and the amount of programming that's on there at any given time slot, there's at least 4 out of the 57 things that I want to go to. So having those things available virtually as well, and getting to see some of them later, I think is a huge asset. So I appreciate that you guys do all that. And thank you to you and Brian and all the folks who are from the New England chapter who are working on this, and all the other HWA folks. So I'm really looking forward to it in about a month. Sorry, make you nervous by saying that, Jim?
No.
Yeah.
Not at this point. We're past nervous.
Well, since we're past nervous, let's jump into some readings. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say, I love how I fall into the late night infomercial voice when I start talking about StokerCon, and it's like, but wait, there's more. Not only do you get these virtual panels, but
you get Ginzu knives. Yeah,
that's it. Well, no, we don't hand out knives at StokerCon. It's
no, that's not a good thing. No weapons allowed. Yeah.
But yes, let's get on to our first reader tonight, Christopher Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher writes fast-paced stories with humor and heart. His horror tale in verse, It's Been a Privilege, was published in 2025 by Alien Buddha Press, which will also publish his narrative poetry collection, America We Need To, later this year. He has independently published 4 novels, including supernatural police procedurals, Mallory and Gunner City of Woe, and Mallory and Gunner City of Pain, a high school horror thriller, Genius High, and a near-future divided America thriller, A Simple Rebellion. His short stories and essays have been published in horror, mystery, crime, and pop culture anthologies. Ryan is also the editor and publisher of Soul Scream Anthologine, combining anthology and magazine elements to celebrate hybrid horror. He's a member of the Horror Writers Association and the Mystery Writers of America. Find him on social media at This Chris Ryan and as co-host of the Tell the Damn Story podcast and YouTube show. Check out his website at chrisryanwrites.blog. All right. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on. Yes, I'm going to read from It's Been a Privilege, pretty subtle. I'm going to read about 7 poems so you can kind of get a little taste of the narrative arc. It's pretty quick, fairly painless for you. So the first one is called Courtship. I held her hand until the end, like a gentleman should. By the time she left, lights were flashing, turning the night red and blue again. Farewell, my love. Give my regards to my other wives. I promise to send more soon. Okay. This one is called Investing in the Future. It's a little longer. A neighbor asked a favor. Could I sit with 2 of her young children so she could run a 3rd spawn to an appointment? No one had ever requested such a thing from me. Intrigued, I agreed and sat there at their dining table, a scalpel in my pocket, as an 8 and 10-year-old taught me about people and racism. The 10-year-old announced that thinking of people as black or white is wrong because you can't color people with those 2 crayons. They wouldn't look real, he said. I nodded. Why not? The 8-year-old answered, her big cornflower blue eyes haloed by blonde ringlets. Because we are a rainbow. Indeed, a rainbow outside, and all of us so very red within. I asked which colors looked to them more like real people, and they ran to get a large Tupperware and dug through way too many Crayolas, organizing their choices into a spectrum of sorts. They educated me on the names of people skin. Off-white for those like Mr. McAllister down the hall, the 10-year-old said. Alabaster, ivory, and soft cream, cried the blonde angel. I chuckled and told them, I do so remember a lady with hair as blonde as yours, dear. She had a creamy complexion. I did not add that when last I saw her, she was stripped and whipped and hanging from barn rafters. The children droned on, describing flesh as salmon and magenta. They asked if I had seen people with such skin. I smiled and nodded, refraining from saying that once at the beach I ran into a drunk who had fallen asleep in the sun and had turned absolutely scarlet. Poor buffoon was screaming for relief, which I gave to him under the boardwalk with a single slash of my blade. He never even had time to peel. I mentioned that the sun brings out in people the rich sepias and golden browns that they were showing me. The siblings added those to our collection, theirs on the table, and mine in so many cherished journals like this one. I wondered to myself whether I should take one of them on a final journey so the other will know that special flash of confirmation when everything gets so real for one thrilling moment. But no, I prefer to watch them grow. Plenty of time for sharing later, on her prom night, perhaps, or the eve of his wedding. Save them from all the pain that comes with wandering out of their secret garden, only to find that the world, that theirs is a world where some crayons hate entire spectrums of others for no reason at all. Back to short ones. This one's called Patience. After 3 weeks of slumber, the Ripper, as they called him, has faded from attention. No more stories on TV, none in the papers. He's no longer trending. Such a relaxed feeling. It helps me see my new beloved, the next chosen one. She is so exceptional that light clings to her like a halo. Hello, my angel. Welcome to a more exciting world. Spiritual sustenance. Work is fun today. So much chatter, so many comments, not to me, of course, but still about me. No. They are about the work, of course. The work. It must always be about the work. That I know and they don't. And I'm only telling you, my soul friend, my lone confidant, my spiritual confessor. Only on these pages can I share the truth, the ever-shifting me I must navigate for my burdened soul to function in an evil, twisted world that has always refused my consecrated role as escort, chaperone, guide, most holy reaper. But here on these pages, you understand me, support me, inspire me to pick up my cross once again. 2 more. The Hunt. She glows and glides to a tiny village apartment in a walk-up. My prey is either so high or blissfully trusting that she never experiences concern. She even holds the door for me. What a good neighbor. The concrete stairs do not squeak as she asks me whether I am visiting Nana Joe on the top floor. I blush and ask how she knows. She laughs and turns a key in her door lock and is slammed inside before she can answer or scream. No Nana Joe for me, my lovely. And finally, this is branding. Steak is expensive, but well earned, because I am now trending by a name different than the one history or legend or lazy ignorance gave me. The Ripper is the past, a nightmare from long ago. I lay claim to a new era, to making a different history, creating fresh, dark legends. Now they call me the name scrawled in blood on a wall in a village walk-up, and somehow posted on the victim's social media before the public knew. Hashtag the gentleman. Thank you for listening.
The gentleman. Ooh, Chris. Wow. Those are freaking awesome.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, all right. So I really would like to talk about where
The
this
origins
came from. Yes. Tell us the story, because it's so cool. I have some thoughts.
This entire project came from this show. I was sitting watching Galactic Terrors, actually right in this room. Carol, I think you know
it was July of 2021 show.
Yes, and Sarah Tantlinger was reading from her piece on the Chicago World's Fair.
It was the Devil's Dreamland, poetry inspired by H.H. Holmes, who was the serial killer. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always have, some writing utensils, and I like index cards. So they were next to me. And as she was reading, the first one, Courtship, came in, and about 3 or 4 or 5, the first 5 in the book, came flying out while Sarah was still reading. And I had no idea who this narrator was. I hadn't met him yet. As a matter of fact, I didn't know his name until almost the end of the process. But for the next 10 days, that guy haunted me. I wrote the whole thing in this kind of fever. And then, rewriting is the secret. So we polished it up and all that. Once in a while, it needs a beat here and that. But it all started with Sarah. So thank you, Sarah. Or if you hated it, I apologize.
Right.
So yeah, this is it's kind of a full circle moment for me to bring it back to where it got the inspiration. So thank you.
That's terrific. Yeah. And I also happen to remember when we were at the Pittsburgh StokerCon, there were a bunch of us there from the New York chapter, and you and I went over together to talk to Sarah, so you could tell her how much she had inspired you, which was really cool.
She was very gracious. God bless her. I do have to shout one other person out. One of our own, Carol, Rebecca Cuthbert designed this cover. So thank you for that, Rebecca. Yeah.
Yes, another New York chapter member. Yeah.
She New York chapter member. God bless her.
Yeah.
And,
she does everything.
She does. And Alien Buddha Press jumped on it, and God bless them.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
The story is, it is a bigger arc, and it does get a little darker, and there are some detectives.
It gets darker. Oh, good.
Little bit. Yeah. So, but it's, it's reflective. I had been thinking about who would be what's the modern monster,
right?
And rich white privilege was all over the headlines and continues to be, and that kind of was just stating in there, and I think it started bursting out during Sarah's reading, and then it became It's Been a Privilege.
Yeah.
So that's the title.
Yes, I think you're right. Somebody in that position of rich white privilege can just act like they belong somewhere. So the gentleman just acts like he can do this, and
in his mind,
well, it's justified clearly.
Yeah, this is what he's supposed to be doing.
Well, yeah,
he's not wrong about anything.
No.
Never have any of that happen.
No. Man, I had a real image of the giant bucket of crayons too. That
Oh,
you
yeah.
were talking about,
Oh, yeah.
Somehow they all get mixed together, don't they?
Oh, yeah. And, and then kids will go on forever and ever like that. And I did feel uncomfortable contrasting that with what he was thinking internally. But, that's the gig, right?
That made
So.
True. Now, I am curious to know, have you done other poetry before this, or was this just
I hadn't written poetry except for Soul Scream. McTavish has one or two poems, but this was before freshman year of college, I went through I wrote hundreds of really bad poems,
Didn't we all? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really surprised that this came out as poetry, because my default is prose, and then I prefer free verse, as you heard, but some parts of the story required a different feel or a different structure. So I went to another book which might seem familiar to some people, right?
Yes, writing poetry in the dark.
Right, poetry in the dark, and I was able to bone up on Fibonacci. I'm from the Bronx. I mispronounce anything, but
I think Fibonacci
in there, and there's a couple of others, and then there's a sequence of haiku that is told really from two different. Well, the haiku is because his ability to think clearly is shattered at one point. So it comes, I thought haiku would be appropriate for that. So I wound up doing a lot of experimentation with how could you use different forms of poetry to accentuate what the story was, what part the story was trying to express. And that was rewarding for me, and I hope rewarding for readers.
Well, that's terrific. Linda Addison, one of our heroes in Horror Writers Association, talks a lot about the structure that you choose for the work, and how it can affect the content, or the content can affect the structure. And, ideally you get one of these things. So I think that's terrific.
And, I think that to some degree it worked, He thinks he's a much better poet than he is, but
you mean the character in your book, not the author, not the
No, I'm quite dubious about my mastery there. I'm still learning, but Harry thinks he's perfect at everything, and that's part of what drives him to do the things he does.
Because he's thoroughly justified, because that was his idea. I am curious, you're talking about the writing in the different formats and such. I know you have an extensive background in journalism, and I'm just curious to hear, how does that prior experience and the way you had to write there affect your prose, or possibly even this poetry?
Well, one of the things that I'm really thankful for in my journalism experience is that I was in a very small Bronx weekly that was completely understaffed. There was only 2 writers. And the Bronx, we would regularly put on the front teaser box, 12 dead, 27 wounded, because it was, during the crack wars. So there was always too many things to write. And it forced me to organize, as I was writing the notes on the way back to the office, and then write quickly, even though I really kind of write it with only a couple of fingers. But that kind of thing paid off here, especially during Sarah's reading. And I didn't mean to be rude to you, Sarah, but it was the inspiration was just exploding out. And, I can write notes very quickly because the journalism experience, nobody can read them but me. I'm a lefty, Carol, that went to Catholic school in the 60s and 70s.
Got retrained.
So if you wrote as a natural lefty, you were the devil. So the nuns taught me to write like this. and very sloppy writing, but it gets the job done for me. I try not to show it in public, but yeah, so the journalism, it still kicks in. You know, the whole idea is to get through the first draft, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
writing quickly helps with that. And then rewrite is king, right? That's really where you find the story, polish the story, you know.
Focus on whether, yeah.
So.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. Well, this is so exciting. Now, I know you have some other things coming up too, but what we'd like to do is ask you to come back with us at the end when I have everybody on and tell us.
I would be honored, and thank you. This was a great experience. I appreciate it. I'll
Thank
see
you
you
for
at the end of the
coming
show.
on. Yeah, it'll be really fun. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Charles. He's coming on next. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Charles BAROUCH has 5 stories in a cultural archive on the moon. If you are on Earth, you can find his stories on Kindle, Nook, and Kobo. Start with Tiago and the Masterless, science fiction, or Endless Hunger, horror, or anthologies published by Daniel Arthur Smith, Shebat Legion, Raventail, Celestial Echo Press, and more. He's published in science fiction, fantasy, horror, humor, Western genres, and he's not done yet. More about Charles BAROUCH at his website, hdwp.com. Let's all welcome Charles BAROUCH.
I'm going to read you something from Drink the Ink, which is part of a collection called Shadows Without Light that'll be out at the end of the month. Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here, Angela Dawes said to her audience at Bigger Books. The truth was, she wasn't pleased at all. The space they'd set up for reading could easily hold 50 chairs, barely had 30, and half of those were empty. Worse yet, the banner, the one she'd be using for every one of her 20 scheduled readings, said that Words Unspoken was her 16th book. It was in fact her 17th. Angela was giving up her 50th birthday to be here. She pushed all that down and smiled at her audience, such as it was. When the reading was done, she received a smattering of applause from the few people who had stayed. There were about 7 of them. 20-ish-looking man with a hipster beard approached her when she tried to leave. His red-brown beard had flecks of black in it, like somebody had splattered him lightly with paint. "This book will improve with age," he said. He walked away while Angela was trying to figure out how to respond. What the hell did that even mean? It was sort of a compliment wrapped in an insult, and she noticed the young man didn't even pick up a copy of the book. And he was the only one who even came up to speak to her. So Angela pulled out her phone while she was waiting for the staff to unhook her banner and return it to her. "Mark, the banner's wrong. Which word did they misspell? There's only like a dozen on it. Oh, happy birthday, by the way. I was going to call later to say. It says I only wrote 16 books. Turning 50 is much that magnificent brain of yours. You wrote 2 books with that idiot Sarah when she was your agent, and I've placed 14. 3 was Sarah. Rumble of Poets was first. Then I wrote Open Season on Seasons. Then Rumble of... What was that about? You know, Mark. 6 women who meet in a castle and have a poetry battle for the hand of a prince. Hey, cool. I would definitely read that, but you didn't write that. I have everything you've done on the shelf behind my desk and nothing with the word Rumble in the title. Maybe you dreamed it. You know what? Write it. I'll find you a publisher. Easy sale. One of the employees slipped off the chair when as they were standing to try to unhook the banner. Hang on, Angela said as she looked to see if the girl was all right. The girl was, but the banner wasn't. It changed again. It said Words Unspoken was her 15th book. Angela scribbled her hotel information on the page from the notepad, ripped it out, gave it to the manager, and said, "Send the banner." She went back to her call with Mark. "Can you pull your copy of Open Season on Seasons?" "My copy of what now?" She hung up. How is this possible? It couldn't be possible. She stepped out of the store and turned the corner, and somebody came up behind her. "We should talk. Come this way." It was the hipster beard man. There were more flecks of black in his beard now, a lot more. Angela didn't want to follow him, but she did. Hipster beard got into the driver's seat of a rental car. Every sensible fiber of her being urged her not to get into the car. She did anyway. He drove for hours. Eventually she fell asleep, and when she awoke, they weren't in the car. She was on a comfy couch in a room where a small party was in full swing. At least a dozen people were milling about, chatting and drinking. The women all wore the same plaid skirts and horn-rimmed glasses. The men all had beards like the man she'd followed. People weren't identical. Each one was fatter or thinner or taller or shorter, but still there was only a subtle sense of differences, and it underlined the unsubtle uniformity of the tweeds and beards. "She's awake," announced one of the Tweedy girls. "We only occasionally drink twice in the same place," Hipster Beard said. "You're something special." "I don't understand." He took her to one of the shelves on the far side of the room. She saw a copy of her third book, Doggerel's Dream. Or rather, she saw half a copy. The book on the shelf was much too thin. "We drink your ink," Hipster Beard said. "I don't understand." "We're consuming it now. We're sucking it out of existence." "That's impossible. All this is impossible. Take me back to my hotel. I have a reading tomorrow." "No, you don't. Your agent Mark Simmons would never take a first-time writer." Angela tried to think if she'd never written those books, how everything would be different. She broke up with her girlfriend Marie because she wanted to write poets. She quit her master's program to finish Open Season and Doggerel's Dream. She'd given up her whole life to her books. They were gone. What was she? It was sinking in now. Crazy or not, her books were disappearing. He put a sympathetic hand on her shoulder. She shrugged it off. "Get in the car. I'll drive you home to your beloved Marie." Angela fainted. Angela woke up in a bed. Wherever she was, it was a big room, nicely decorated, and for some reason, her waking brain thought about her ratty apartment instead of thinking about how she got here. Then her brain shut down entirely because Marie walked in. Not as she remembered her, but as she'd be now, years after they'd broken up. "Morning, love," Marie said cheerily. "You need to prep for class." "Class?" "Yes, you have a lecture to give at 2, and as usual, you haven't started writing it. Up, up, my lazy, lazy love. I've got breakfast on the table, and eggs are getting cold." Angela got up and looked at herself in the mirror. The scar on her forearm was gone. She looked at the bookshelf in the bedroom. Half of it was manuscripts. She pulled one off the shelf. It was her fourth book, or some version of it. The pages were littered with handwritten comments. It was an early draft. "Breakfast." She still had a manuscript, not a finished work. The others were the same, 14 manuscripts. The rest of her shelf was all books about how to write and sell your work. She walked out of the bedroom and down a short hallway to the kitchen. There was a breakfast nook. Marie had always been going on about how she wanted one. This was somehow Angela's life now. Master's complete, Marie present, job teaching. It was all they dreamed of together. She woke up one morning and she didn't wonder where she was. It took a month before that happened. She looked at the spot where Marie had slept. Marie was always up first, and smiled. Her old life, the one she traded away everything for her writing, was gone. She had still written. There were manuscripts on the shelf, but she never published anything. What she had published were the books on the other half of the shelf. All the books on how to write, how to get published. They were hers. It took a month, but she finally accepted the new truth as the only truth. At the end of her class, a student approached her. He was in his 20s and had a hipster beard with flecks of black in the red. "You need to start publishing." "Thirsty?" "More than you can know. We sipped from Levi, Edgar Allan Poe. We sampled one ancient writer until only Beowulf remained. So many words to drink, but yours are different." "Different? I teach writing. I know I'm not the best. Save your flattery." No. You're the best at being a non-writer. In the past, we drink and the writer's life gets worse. It's our shame. But look what we did to Lovecraft. By the time we were done, he was a raving racist and anti-Semite. But I live in a beautiful house with the love of my life. I gave everything to my writing, and you drank it away. We drained your earliest works, but we expected you to still publish the later ones, and this, all of this, we didn't expect. You were a great joy. We've made a positive change in the world. Why risk it? Wait, I know, you could drink my nonfiction. Frankly, the world doesn't need another book on how to write. Those won't be missed. Nonfiction is dry. We need the robust flavor of great adventures and impossible situations. I can't risk what I have. I can't. Marie wants a second house, a summer place for when you aren't teaching. Something out in the country, airy, easy to manage. He walked away, leaving that thought hanging. In the other timeline, Angela had turned down a job as an advertising copywriter in order to write Wisdom of the Crows. Maybe she wrote it and they drank it. She could pick up some side work with that agency. That might be enough to cover the monthlies of renting a little house in the country. The risk and the reward played out in the back of her mind as she taught her 2 remaining classes for the day. At dinner, Marie mentioned a summer place and obliquely hinted at the idea of getting one. Angela wanted to think that deciding to publish was purely altruistic. It helped the drinkers. It helped Marie. But she knew it was more than that. Angela was a fiction writer in her heart, and all she'd published was nonfiction. All she'd published was books about how other people could live her dream. She called Mark Simmons. She convinced him to take her on despite the lack of published fiction. It felt right that it was Mark. Wisdom was her 4th book in that other world, that other reality. She knew it had to be her first book in the new, better one. It took 3 months to beat the manuscript into shape. It wasn't exactly the version she published in the other time, but it was an excellent first novel. She sent it off and waited impatiently. Mark had always given her feedback in the old timeline. He was eager to get each book. In this reality, she pushed him, so it was on the bottom of the pile, and months passed. Well, said Hipster Beard. Angela noticed how little black there was in his red beard, and he looked ill. He was agitated. Can't you sip a little Myers? I'm not fond of her, Angela suggested. We need your work. Just get it published. Manuscript isn't satisfying, not at all. It's like eating a bowl of sugar. You buzz, you crash. A published work, a well-written, well-edited work, it's like a feast. You've never tasted it with your paltry mortal palate. Just get it done. He stormed off, and Angela thought she detected a hint of limp. He was hurting. She called Mark. Right. You're that professor. I'll be blunt. If you had a following, maybe, but as a first book, I'm going to pass. It isn't strong enough. What if I had more books for you? Would it be strong enough if you knew I was prolific? That I can deliver on a schedule, solemn promise? Look, I know you do nonfiction, and maybe you can do that. You can commit for regular deadlines. Fiction's different. Most writers are lucky to get a book out a year. Most can't even accomplish that. I have 14 manuscripts, and you'll find they're all saleable. I'll bet on it. Release every one of them, one every 18 months. I'll be 72 before you run out of books for me. And I can write more while you push these. Don't send me all 14, all right? Just send the next one. I promise it'll go to the top of the pile. If it's what you say it is, I'll have you send the 3rd one and we'll have a deal. Angela only gave herself a week to polish this one. It wasn't as tight as the last thing she sent Mark, but she needed to get it while he was still interested. She sent it off manuscript media mail 8 days after she pitched it, and Mark called her a week later. I never do this, but okay, I'm in. You send me the 3rd one. I want to get you a 3-book deal with one of the bigger publishers. That'll start things rolling. It was perfect. She'd already written the drafts, no new sacrifices. Whatever writing them had cost her, she'd already paid it and still landed here with Marie and a nice home. Now maybe a summer place or a summer rental. And Mark was on board and it was gonna work. All 3 books did well. Once the 3rd book was published, 2 years after she'd started her deal with the drinkers, her new book ceased to exist. Hipster Beard looked happy when she saw him next. He met her at a coffee shop. You drank all 3? We've developed an affinity for your prose. You fill us in a different way. But I bought a summer place with that money and it's gone. It never was. You knew we were going to drink at least one. You can't blame us that you lost the place. You knew it. Admit it. You knew. I'm still unclear on how any of this works, to be honest. And I remember both paths, the old timeline and the new, and now the newer new one, and it gets muddled, and it's finding it harder to think clearly. We need to get another book out there. How? Mark doesn't remember me. I need to find a new agent or convince him all over again. And what's in it for me? You drank away my summer home. You're a promising student named Larry something. He's about to get his first book deal. If you don't produce, we'll drink his instead. We'll drain everything he ever tries to write. Angela went pale. They were willing to threaten the people around her. She had a lot of friends in the writing community. A lot of students over the years in her new and newer realities. Or we could force ourselves to drink your nonfiction. You lose your position at the college. They like you. They keep you because they can brag about having you on board. Without your nonfiction, you're less desirable. lose the house, you might lose Marie, or maybe make you one of us, force you to share our hunger. What you're saying is publish or perish. I'm saying be careful, you'll be forced to eat your words. And that's drink your ink.
Charles, thank you.
Yeah.
That really feels like a writer's nightmare come to fruition.
As one of my friends in the writing community, yes.
Yes. So what was the, and I'm going to ask you this question, and I think generally I hate it when writers ask this question, but I have to ask anyway for this one because it feels like there might be a specific inspiration for this story. What inspired you to write this?
It's all Shebat Legion's fault. She was doing a book, and I always get the title wrong. I'm going to say Unbreakable Ink, but I'm pretty sure it was something different. She did 2 volumes. And I wrote this specifically for that. I sent it into her for the first volume. The mail got missed, and it did not get published by her. And so I had this sitting on the shelf. So when I got the opportunity to put Shadows Without Light together for Raventail, it was like, this has to go in. And I try not to write writer-specific horror, but this is lighter. It's a little friendlier. My mom won't read my horror generally. This she'll listen to this Galactic Terrors. I'll get to play this for her because it's friendly enough.
Oh, good. Okay. It's accessible horror.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love that phrase, drink your ink. And I think, that is the kind of thing that could bounce around a writer's head and have so many different meanings, positive or negative. We want readers to drink our ink.
Yes.
But there's that downside to it too. It's sort of, I love how it captures the idea that our work is then being consumed in some way.
Yeah, it's a core idea, and I really love the idea of playing with somebody whose life keeps getting better the less they write.
That was the other thing. I'm like, I think Charles is trying to tell us something here about the writing life, and it came up in my head as I was listening, is that old, that classic bit of writing advice that writers like to give new writers, which is, if you can do anything else besides write, do that. And sort of thinking, wow, this character's life improves with the less they publish. And I think that says something too about, the writing life, of the fact that we know we could probably live, maybe, I don't know. It's a little trite. I don't want to say that, we could probably have more productive, happier, wealthier lives if we didn't spend so much time writing. I don't think that's true necessarily, but it does say something about, if you're going to be a writer, make sure it's something you're really passionate about, something that's part of you. It's not just an affectation to put on.
But I will point out there's one major perk of being a writer.
Yes.
It's all of you guys.
I
always tell people I write because it puts me a seat at the table. I mean, I write because I want to tell stories. I write for a lot of reasons, but part of it is I want a seat at this table. You're people I want to talk to. This is interesting to me. When we did Lich, I'm looking forward to people at Stoker. This is a lovely community of people, and the opportunity to engage with all of you, to get that seat at the table, is one of the major perks.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things that has kept me connected to this particular writing community, the horror community, has kept me helping behind the scenes with StokerCon and the HWA for so long.
Yes.
Yeah, and this isn't stuff that you would do if you were like, now I got to go hang out with those people. No, it's like this. That's the fun part in a lot of ways. Well, that's great. So I want to ask you another question. You mentioned a project you've worked on recently that you described as a really weird writing experiment.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else would ever enjoy doing this, but we had a really good time. I was talking to Cindy O'Quinn, who's also been on the show.
Yes.
And we were going to write something. And before we got to something bigger, we figured we'll try something small. So she went through a couple of anthology prompts and picked out one that sounded good to her and said, what would your opening sentence be? And I said, the closet monsters are hungry. She said, great. I opened up a Google document. She took the top. I took the bottom. I wrote the end of the story while she wrote the beginning of the story. And we're not on the phone or anything. We're literally throwing notes in the story and then erasing them when each other sees them. Like, I've got them in the backyard. You need to get them out of the house. and we spent 3 hours and wrote about 6,000 words and threw out about 4,000 words and came up with something worth publishing. And I don't know that I want to do that to my brain again, but it was really cool to do that at least once, to literally do the improv version of writing where I'm watching what she's writing as I'm writing my part. She's watching what I'm writing, so she can start filling in details so that the foreshadowing's there, and I can take those details and work with them, and then I can put something in and she goes, oh, that's coming. I need to add that in. It was really, really both exhilarating and painful and tremendous fun.
Wow. How long did it take you to write that?
3 hours to do, like I said, about 6,000 words. We kept about 1,600 words when we were done.
Okay.
And then we did 2 very quick edit sessions and sent it off. And that was recently enough that I don't know if it's even going to get accepted.
Yeah.
But whether it gets taken or not, it was tremendous fun to do something like that. And like I said, I don't know that I want to do that again, but I also am like, I wonder what that would be like, with this author or that author. Maybe I should, line a couple of people up, see if they're willing to play.
Well, you need a very particular kind of writer to do that. Not all writers can jump into that sort of, high wire act, seat of your pants kind of. What's I'm trying. Oh, there's a classic image of the you're constant. It's like constantly bailing the boat that the leak isn't plugged in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's really. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. I don't think I would be a good collaborator for that kind of project, but I love breaking out. Love hearing about writers breaking out of the traditional modes just to kind of see what you get, what the results are.
To be fair, until I did it, I didn't know I could do it. Till she did it, she didn't know she could do it. You might find some things out about yourself.
Yeah, that's true. It's a learning experience. You get out of your comfort zone. What does it have a title?
It is called Shadows Crave Smoke.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we're keeping our fingers crossed for you and Cindy that it's accepted, and definitely let us know if that's the case so we can all go find it when it's published.
Oh, I will be bragging from rooftops if we did something like this and it worked. I mean, that's just big fun. That is big fun.
It is. It's exciting. So, well, that's great. Well, Charles, thank you for sharing your story with us tonight. I think, going by the comments, there were a lot of appreciation for the story in there. And I
It's
think,
writer-specific horror,
yes.
So yes, this is the right room. Yeah,
exactly. All right. Well, we'll have you back in a little bit to chat about what you have coming up next. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Our next writer, and I guess, I don't know. I'm wondering, it's our next author is RANDEE DAWN, and I'm wondering if Randy's a little nervous now that you're all going to drink her ink. RANDEE is the best-selling author of the funny as hell pop culture fantasy novel Tune In Tomorrow. She has 3 novels out in 2025: Dark Celtic Musical Fantasies, The Only Song Worth Singing, and Leave No Trace, and the next funny foray into the Toon-iverse. We interrupt this program. Her short fiction has appeared in numerous anthologies, including most recently Dark Spores, Stories We Tell After Midnight, Volume 4. She is the co-author of the Law & Order SVU Unofficial Companion, a veteran entertainment journalist for the LA Times, Variety, and Today.com. RANDEE lives in Brooklyn, and you can learn more about RANDEE at randeedawn.com. All right, welcome, RANDEE.
Totally groove into that music there. I love it. Thank you so much for having me on. And thanks to Chris and Charles for giving us some great poems and great stories. I'm going to read to you from tonight a little excerpt from my book, The Only Song Worth Singing, which is about a trio of best friends who are in a band. They're from Ireland. They're touring America for the first time in the 1990s, and they are pursued, and their lives are turned upside down by a trio of scary fairies. So with that as an introduction, I'm just going to read to you a section from the book. In this part, the band have just finished a barn burner of a show. One of the members, Kieran, had met a mysterious woman earlier in the day, and he's sort of looking to connect with her after the show. And this is where I wanted to bring us to. Most nights, Kieran would do anything to delay a show's end. That final encore was the best and the worst moment of the evening. A firefly blink of light and perfection, final notes spiraling from speakers, hovering over the audience, seeping into their ears and back out through raised fingertips. Those last minutes were sweeter than whiskey, savored among the pounding of his heart and the ache in his back. A show that went well was a perfect balance of desire and fulfillment, ecstasy and little death all rolled into one. He was addicted. But this night, their last in Boston, chimed differently. This time, as the notes swirled away into the skies, a different sound echoed in his head, an urgent summons. Come. And that moment the final note hit, he was out of there. He dropped his guitar and was backstage before Mal and Patrick even finished with their bows. High feedback whine from the abandoned instrument chased him down the corridor to their dressing room. Once inside, he flung his soaked shirt away. It caught on the edge of a chair, steaming from the immense heat his body put out. That had truly been a barn burner of a show, over 2 hours long, and he should be ready to collapse. But adrenaline sang in his head, his ears, his blood. God, but it had been beautiful out there. Mal had leapt on that piano like a long-lost lover, golden hair flying as he'd nodded and swayed to the songs. He'd played the hell out of that thing, kicking over his stool with a flourish and letting loose a throaty growl that sent those songs into the rafters to fill every inch of the room. Patch had stopped trying to be the big man on stage, coming back from wherever he'd buggered off to that day with a gleam in his eye and a presence Kieran hadn't ever sensed in him. Said he'd met a girl or something. Kieran and Patch had sawed back and forth with their guitars in a dance, passing the spotlight between them. All three of them, with Robin on the drums, had locked together cogs and wheels in a well-oiled machine. As for his own performance, Kieran felt positively elated. All he'd had to do was think about that girl, Shiri, and it was as if the instrument began playing itself. He threw himself around the stage, possessed by the unexpected sensation that all eyes were on him for once, with his bandmates mere shades of gray in contrast. The chance to show off and be admired for it, well, that was what a man lived for, wasn't it? Cold water brimmed in the sink basin, and he shoved his face in, making ecstatic bubbles. Firm slaps of appreciation landed on his bare shoulders, but whatever Mal and Patrick might be saying behind him was muffled by the water and the music still filling his ears. He rose up from the sink with a gasp and sprayed drops around like a dog. Come. Time. The words were ice picks driving through his skull. He staggered backward, toppling into the sofa. Kieran slammed the heel of a hand into one eye and clutched an armrest. This wasn't a migraine. It was a voice in the front of his brain, a summoning like feedback whine that ripped through him. 2 words, and he was paralyzed. Come. Time. Now. Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself and thought back. Wait. No. Now. It was the girl, the woman, the Shiri. Funny name, that. Of course she was here, mere feet outside the dressing room door, waiting for him. A pleasing enough fact, even if the piercing call in his head was not. During the show, he'd caught sight of her in the crowd, her stillness making her stand out among the hundreds of throbbing, dancing fans. Bright and shiny, it was as if she'd come with her own spotlight. Their third meeting would be unlike the others, and it made him tremble with anticipation. But Kieran did not care to be ordered about. It didn't matter that leaving the room and following that voice was the only thing he could think clearly about. There was something uncanny about that woman, something that pulled him to her and blotted out all other sense, and that was a bit terrifying. Exciting, but terrifying, as so many things in life were. You all right there, see? Mal leaned toward him, holding out a towel. Kieran waved him off. Headache. He dried his face and patted under his arms, then turned back to the sink mirror. He'd never thought of himself as a magnet for the ladies, even if pulling them had never been a problem. He had the square, sturdy face of his father and deep-set eyes of his mother, an unusual combination he'd heard referred to more often as having character than handsome. Yet he'd always made that elemental look work for him, so long as he paired it with a sunny smile or witty remark. Without either, Kieran knew he could be intimidating. Da had once joked that his son would make a terrific bully if he only put his mind to it. He gave no thought to any of that when he stood in front of Shiri. When she looked at him, her gaze confirmed that there was no better vista in the world. That cool, pointed voice came again, gentler this time, but still insistent, and he fought back a bit longer, dragging a comb through his wet hair and yanking on a mostly fresh blue shirt. Almost, he tried to think back at her, tweaked at how she'd gotten into his brain. There was one more thing to be done. Tarancho. He beckoned at Mal and Patch in Irish to come over, and without question they folded together as they always did after a show, wrapping arms around each other's shoulders and leaning forward, heads touching, eyes shut. Like a sports team on the field, but with a meditative quality. This was a good, calm place to share after a show. Here in this circle, he heard nothing but the three of them sharing the same air, the same breaths. He couldn't remember how or when the ritual had started, but by now it was a requirement after each performance. It said, wherever they might go next, there was always this circle to come back to. Within it, they were unbreakable. During the long moment of silence, Kieran felt nothing awry in his head. Then Mal spoke for them all. On Rudish on Nivas is untak, also in Irish. What is rare is wonderful. They'd had a rare night, and no one knew when they'd see the like of it again. One more held breath, and the huddle came apart. They glanced at one another, then slipped into the real world. Small break here. But Kieran could not reach her. 10 minutes ago, he'd spotted Shiri across the room where she sat half in shadow at a cocktail table alone. No one acknowledged her. No one came over with a drink or to take an order. It was as if the talking, smoking, drinking well-wishers now crowding the VIP section of the otherwise cleared-out venue didn't even know she existed. But Kieran saw her, and he knew her patience had to be waning. He'd been trying to get to her ever since walking out of the dressing room, but the moment he'd stepped from the riser by the bar, he was swarmed by record company reps, journalists, and the occasional fan who'd leaked through. He smiled for them, signed a few CDs, shook hands, and mumbled about being grateful for all the affection. And he was, but he had a different idea of affection right now, and it had nothing to do with this lot. His manager Rich's voice echoed to him. Surly musicians do not make for happy record company people, and keeping record company people happy is half your job. So he pasted on a broad smile, pulling it so wide his face hurt, and gave side hugs to the company reps while posing for photos and attempting to keep an eye on that square table in the back. Frustrated, he turned to one side, hoping to make a break for it. Instead, he encountered the groupies, Kay and Katie. They stood shoulder to shoulder, faces alight. That was the best show we've ever seen, Katie cried. Yeah, echoed Kay. Kieran wasn't certain he'd ever heard Kay say anything that didn't underscore her friend's words. He liked them both, but they were in the way. Everything was in the bloody way. Yeah, he snapped. You'll be able to say you fucked me when. Their faces fell, and he nearly felt bad. A person shouldn't kick a puppy just because it gnaws on your boots. But then he glanced at the cocktail table and found it empty. God, said Katie, what did we do? Yeah, sniffed Kay. Kieran rubbed his eyes. Shiri or no, he was perhaps 10 seconds from making a run for the side doors. The room was closing in on him. His chest tightened. Maybe it's time for you girls to get on home, he said in a thin, dark voice that didn't even feel like his own. Ain't you got lives or something? Oh my God, said Katie. The ego has landed. A hand snaked forward and brushed Katie's bare shoulder. She jumped and yelped and jumped back as if singed. Shiri slipped through the breach. You may go, she said in a soft, insinuating voice. I'm here now. Gaping, the women first stared at Shiri, then at Kieran. What happened next appeared to go in stutters, as if a strobe light had been turned on. Katie reached up a hand to take aim at Kieran's face. He felt the slap coming, but no blow landed. Shiri caught the girl's hand with one lashing movement and held it in midair. What did I say? Shiri asked, still using that languid, soft tone. Her fingers tightened. A hand curled inward. Ow, ow, you're hurting me, Katie cringed, tears springing to her eyes. Kay tried to pry Shiri's fingers away, but a searing look made her cower. She shoved Kieran. Help her, you asshole. Answer me, said Shiri. What did I say? You said, you said, Katie's voice was garbled. Stop, Kieran ordered. It's all right. Is it? Shiri continued to close her fingers. Kieran thought he heard bones crunching together. Is it truly? Katie nodded quickly, beads of tears flying from her cheeks. All right, then. Shiri released her. Katie curled her hand to her chest. It glowed an angry purple red. Thank you for your services, she told the girls. You are discharged. Go away now. Quickly. The girls scattered like released mercury into the party. The last thing Kieran heard was a gasping sob and a comment about ice, then a second voice that might have been Mal's. But none of that stuck with him. His eyes were only for Shiri, and he stared at her with a combination of fear and awe. You have a way with folk, you do, he said. That metallic laugh again. You do as well. You don't know me. Oh, I know you better than you imagine. Shiri set a hand on his chest, a fiery touch that he'd been thinking about for hours, but he flinched slightly before settling against it. Now, tell me, do you still hunger? His heart raced. Depends what's on the menu. She clapped her hands together and made a delighted noise, bouncing on tiptoe. Everything you could ask for, Amahara. Everything, in exchange for everything. Kieran wasn't looking for a soulmate, no matter how alluring Shiri was, but he was also beyond whatever she had to say. He wanted to see what she could do, and they were done playing around. He took her hand in his, such heat in that touch, and led her to the door. Outside, the bracing night air made him draw her close, his large hands nearly swallowing her head whole as he turned her toward him. Her hair brushed against his wrists, curling around them like manacles. Fair trade, he whispered huskily. Everything, for everything. A slow smile split her face. Yes. How do we begin then? Like this, she whispered, and swallowed him whole. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Subtle yet effective. Yeah.
Good.
Great,
Glad to hear it.
great comment from Jim Ryan in the chat.
Yes. Yeah.
It's my favorite line.
I wrote that down. Yeah.
Yeah,
help,
it's terrific. Oh my gosh.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
That was fun.
So
Thank you.
this is a change of direction for you as a novelist.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually wrote this book a long time ago, long before I did anything funny with Tune In Tomorrow.
Okay.
So actually what I started out, when I started out writing books, I was trying to be very serious, taking everything very literally. And, this is the book that got me my agent, but I couldn't find a publisher for it right away. And I moved on to another book. And then finally my agent was like, maybe you should try something different. And I did try something different, and that was Tune In Tomorrow. And so, yeah, this is kind of a gear shift. And, there was questions about, well, should I use a different pen name or something? People not going to. And I decided that, I just kind of built this platform on RANDEE DAWN. All my nonfiction was with RANDEE DAWN too. So I just stuck with RANDEE DAWN. But yeah, now I'm kind of in the position of telling everybody it's not funny, at least not intentionally.
Well, I think, for our horror group and the sort of extended universe here, I think we've known you as someone with a lot of dark stories to tell. I'm thinking of the story you wrote for Even in the Grave that Carol and I edited, and I remember us both reading that and kind of agreeing, wow, that is dark. It's a great story, but it is dark. And there's one, I can't remember the title, and I
the subway
one, yeah,
Cat person.
The cat person, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just really vicious in a way, but wonderfully so. Just a really powerful story. So it's kind of interesting to see you now that finding an outlet. For that.
If I can respond to that, what's really interesting is that for me, at least, I actually kind of approach both kind of stories in the same way, because although they're not literally opposite sides of the spectrum, when I was writing funny and I was doing my final drafts of, going through all the scenes, I always like to say that I tried to find something. How do I make it funnier? Like, how do I turn this up to 11, right? As if it was in Spinal Tap. And when it comes to writing horror stories or scary stories, I'm kind of doing the other direction. I'm kind of like, okay, how do I make this scarier? How do I make this more shocking? So what I'm trying to my best to do is not remain in the middle when I'm doing those type of things. Maybe this is technically a more middle of the road thing, but I still think it has its scary moments as well as its hopeful moments. So this is kind of a mix of things, although it's not, again, not intentionally fun.
Yeah. And it's intriguing too, because I mean, there's some dark stuff there that all of a sudden this guy is treating his groupies badly, because he's got Sherry on the mind,
Yeah.
Song for that. Yeah. So
well, he's got an inner jerk, and she's encouraging him to bring it out.
Yes, that scene. Yeah. And I think it's cool as well because, talking about writing something that's fun and funny, or writing something dark like that. When Jim and I read the story, Even in the Grave, the first thought is, she seems like such a nice person. but that is what I love about the horror community, because horror is so friendly and so welcoming and so non-denominational. We don't care if you're this published or this published. People will talk to anybody. And I firmly believe it's because we get a lot of that bad juju out in the writing. So I think that
Agreed.
that helps a lot, So.
Yeah, I tell everybody that, I mean, yes, all the writers who are my friends are lovely, wonderful people. But as a group, I find that horror is the least drama, the least political, the least, everybody is this open and genuinely nice, pretty much across the board in horror.
I think my take on it is we spend so much time looking at and thinking about the bad stuff, the dark stuff, the horrifying stuff, that we're sort of, when we lift our heads up from the page, it's sort of like, all right, let's go enjoy life, because
it's
really bad,
let's go laugh. Yeah.
At least we're not back in those pages.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Let's not put any more of this bad
nobody's
stuff into the world.
Nobody's drinking our ink. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a great comment from Chris Ryan, and I wanted to bring this up.
And I wanted to talk about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. That's very nice to say.
Love the authority with which you merge the entertainment world with myth and legend, which is a really great observation.
So, Randy, can you tell us a little bit, explain to everybody a little bit what you do with your entertainment journalism and such, and how you know about backstage things on this music thing, and who do you think about when you do your data?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so these days I cover largely film and TV and awards season and that kind of thing. But my earliest journalism, when I was in college and fresh out of college, I was doing a lot of music journalism. So I was interviewing bands and going to concerts all the time. And when things really went the right way, I could hang out on the bus or be backstage. And there's a lot of waiting around that goes on in music. And it's not just like the band waiting around to play. It's like when you go to a show, you're waiting around for them to come on. When you're the journalist, and you don't have like a legal ID to be in the bar, and you go and do the interview at sound check, then you stick around in the bar, because then they're not checking your ID. So I had a lot of time to hang out in the clubs and listen to the sound checks and really get a sense for from my own limited perspective. I'm not a musician. I have never toured, but from my own limited perspective, see what that life was like. And it was really very eye-opening. I was on the road for 5 days with Radiohead in the mid-90s. And that was probably the most extended experience that I had with a band at any given time, because that's just when you're on the road with them, even though I couldn't travel in the bus because no girls in the bus. But even when but just seeing them at show after show after show and seeing how they interact with each other and then talking to them individually, like I just got a real good sense about what it was like for them to be doing this. And one thing I really wanted to do with this book was portray the band members as legitimate, real human beings, as opposed to the caricatures and stereotypes we often see in movies and TV.
Interesting. And just out of curiosity, what kind of behavior did you encounter with these bands? Is there any bad behavior that maybe crept into this story, or good behavior that made you think, think of them as real humans?
I mean, did I see drugs being used? Yes, I saw drugs being used. Those laminated backstage passes do many things other than hang around and let you get back in, Were some of them just, jerks to each other or mild jerks to me? Yes, that happened too. And again, that's part of the humanity part of things. There wasn't anything like, there was no Led Zeppelin moments, shall we say. There was nothing really quite that outsized. Most of the bands that I was talking to were probably in America for the first time, in their early 20s, doing what I consider, certainly in retrospect, didn't necessarily think of it this way at the time, but in retrospect, doing a very brave thing. I mean, this is pre-internet, pre-cell phones. You're going to a foreign country you probably haven't been to before. If you're lucky, you're in a bus, you're probably in a van. You're meeting tons of strange people. The only people you meet on a regular basis are people that you've paid to be around you, managers, record company people, journalists, whatever. And, you can get really sick of one another pretty fast. So it's, it lends itself to outsized behavior. But the people that I met were generally just sort of, trying not to get sick while they're on the road, or trying to figure out how they could get a little extra money to go shopping or something, or actually see the place that they're in. When they would meet somebody who they could have a conversation with that wasn't just for on the record, you could have like conversations till 4 a.m. I mean, it was just, I had plenty of those, and those were a lot of fun. And yes, there was a lot of drinking involved too. But it was just a way to really get to know them. And they were so happy to just have conversations with people that weren't the same conversations they had today.
That's cool. Very cool.
So it's very fun that you have that background, and then you turn it into a story, and you walked away from it, but you came back to it. And I've heard you do a few other little clips about this and talk about this book. So I've been really looking forward to having it, appear and see this. So how do you feel now, having wrapped up the thing you did long ago? What's your feeling?
I'm very glad that it's out. I'm very glad that it looks like I wanted it to look. I managed to get actual music lyrics. I got clearances to do actual music lyrics from 2 bands that I really like that are in there. And the cover, I'm very pleased with the cover. I really just like how the whole package came out. And so it's very nice to also finally be able to put it to bed. I don't have to worry about, is this something that I will at some point in my dotage bring out and self-publish, or will the world never see it or anything. So I'm very happy to be able to do that. And then I have another book coming out later this year, which is also one of these books that I wrote before Tune In Tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to be able to have those conversations too.
Yeah.
Very cool. So a nuts and bolts question for you, because I know there are a lot of writers are unsure about what the rules are for lyrics. Like if you wanted to include some lyrics as an epigraph or something like that. So you went through a process to get permissions, and without giving away anything you're not supposed to. Just really quickly, what is that process like? Like if somebody wants to get permission for lyrics, where do they start?
It varies. It's every band, and it totally varies. There was a 3rd band that I wanted to include their lyrics in, and they were a small band out of Boston called Tribe, and they had a song called Joyride that I really liked. That was initially the title of the book and everything. And I contacted one of the guys in the band. Like I found him on LinkedIn, and I'm like, hey,
on LinkedIn. Wow.
who has, and he's like, I have no idea who has permissions. I will tell you that you can use it, but I don't know who owns our publishing at the moment. And I'm like, that's too much of a risk. So I ended up, there were 2 bands that I also wanted to include their lyrics. And I managed to get in touch with their managers, and through their managers, I got in touch with the band, and the bands were always like, go for it. This is fine. But I also couldn't risk that the publishers wouldn't come after me. So there was a whole process of, there are a couple of different companies that do publishing rights. It's not an easy one-size-fits-all database. And then trying to explain, it's for a book, it's not for a TV or movie. I don't want to play the music. I just want to use these lyrics. Then they want to know how many books you're going to publish. What if you want to publish it overseas? Like it's this whole process. And also it was not cheap. This was an indulgence of mine. I could have definitely done this without those lyrics, but they'd been with a part of the book for so long that I was just like, no, I want them in there. So that was just, that was a present.
One of the points you're making is that the band or even the songwriter may not own the right to give that permission.
I mean, if they're smart, at some point they do get back their own publishing rights, because then they do. That's how you can make money in the long term as a band, right? Because people will license it out and get money. But when you're young and you need to make money immediately, or your contract says that they own the publishing, you don't always get a choice as to whether or not you get to keep your publishing. I went with a band once, and tell me if I'm rattling on too long because I got a lot of stories.
No.
But there was this band that I was hanging out with once called the Trash Can Sinatras. And there was this little Scottish band, adorable, jangly pop, wonderful band. And we were hanging out after their show in New York the next day. Like there was a PR person who was taking them around to various tourist spots. And at the end of the day, they were supposed to go over to this publishing company, Warner Chappell Music. And so I was hanging out with them and I'm like, I'll go. So sure, we went. And like there was a whole basement of just all of these reel-to-reel tapes that people all the way back to like Frank Sinatra were in the basement on these reel-to-reels. They went up to the office of the main guy who was running things, a guy named Frank Military, who apparently had worked with Sinatra, and there were all these pictures of famous people on the wall. And they had a small meeting with him to say, you know, we want to publish your music, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't in the room for that one. I wasn't allowed to do that. But that's kind of how it goes, is the band will meet with different publishers and make a decision about how they want to do it. And going back to the 20-somethings in America for the first time, like maybe they're not the best judges of how this process ought to work, but that was an example of one publishing option.
And Jim Ryan had a comment that ASCAP and BMI are good first steps to find out who to go to.
Yeah. The companies I ended up working with were not companies I had ever heard of before, but yeah, you have to do a certain amount of digging and a certain amount of querying and a certain amount of following up before you even can get to the right person to ask the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Because I've seen books published and lyrics are in there and you just know that they didn't.
There's potentially some issues. Yeah.
And I've talked to authors who were heartbroken because it was just too expensive to get like 2 lines of a song that they really felt were the perfect fit for something, and they just had to take it out. So
exactly. I mean, the one advantage I would say to actually paying it and going through it legitimately and everything is when it was all done. And who knows if this is going to go anywhere, but this gave me the opportunity to say to the managers, hey, the book's out. Can I send you a copy of the book? Can you get a copy to the artist? And in both cases, they said they would. Now, whether it happens, who knows? Whether they read it, who knows? But it's another way to get your book in front of people.
They tell 2 friends, and so on. And we wound up doing the same thing for the anthology that I co-edited called Discontinue If Death Ensues. Those lines are from a poem by Marge Piercy. And for us to use the title, we reached out to the publisher and asked for permission and got written permission to use those words as our title, just in case.
You know, it's always good to be just in case. I have a couple of lines from a Yeats poem that's in there, and I looked and I checked in many places, and most of his stuff is under public domain at this point. So I didn't chase that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the things that I think where people are getting permission for these days are often really fair use, but we're all so afraid that
society, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, we don't want to be the Davy against the Goliath that takes us to court because they don't think it's fair use. So.
Right, exactly. And probably would they ever notice, this is not a big 5 book or big 4 book. This is a book that probably would just never come to their attention, but I feel I can sleep better at night knowing I did the deal.
Well, listen, let's bring in a couple more authors and we can tilt at some more windmills all together. So let's have Charles and Chris join us. Yay! Yay!
Charles.
Hey, guys, this has been so much fun tonight. Yeah.
Been a lot of fun, yeah.
Thank you
Great
all.
stuff, both Charles and Randy.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Yeah, very wildly different readings too, which is quite fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've commented about that before in Galactic Terrors. We don't really know ahead of time always what people are going to read, and it just tends to work out well in with variety and complementary themes and things like that. So this was fun.
Well, you get a bunch of good people together who are writers, and good things come from it. So that's it. Well,
you guys ask really good questions, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. Let's see what else is coming up for everybody. What, Chris, you want to start us out? So
sure. At the end of the month, I have another collection of poetry, narrative poetry. America, We Need to Talk. And the conceit is that the speaker of the poems is on a final date with the love of his life, which happens to be America. And they're talking about all the things that have gone wrong. So it's not overtly political, but, commentaries in there. The horror comes from, as you can see in the ripped up flag, that, you know, the dream, the promise, the idea of America is being really challenged. So to write that as, you know, as if it was a relationship between two, that kind of allowed me to do that without, you know, I didn't want to climb up on a soapbox that, you know, and this time in American history, no one's listening to the other side. So I thought maybe this way, this might help. So we'll see. But that's coming out next. Then after that, we're in production now with Soul Scream Anthology, Fear and Loathing, which is coming out and probably end of June or maybe around, you know, Independence Day. Hey,
Chris, how many issues of Soul Scream have you?
That will be
42. No.
that'll be the 6th volume or maybe the 7th volume. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there have been many people in the chapter who have been kind enough to support by submitting. I have to get Charles in there, but everyone else in this panel right here has been in Soul Scream, and I
is
deeply
this your
indebted.
third year?
Was a good time.
It's about 3 years, yeah. So.
We should do like a, you know, a Soul Scream anthology and retrospective at some point.
Well, I would love to do that. You know, I am at your beck and call because I'm sure we could fill a panel and have some fun with that. So yeah,
cool.
That would be cool. But Charles, I'd love to reach out to you and see if we can't squeeze something in, maybe with Fear and Loathing.
Tell me what you want.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
Cool.
Charles, he wants Fear and Loathing. I think it's quite clear from the title.
Yeah.
I'm fresh out of Loathing, but I'll tweak some.
Lots of fear going around, though.
Yeah, it's true. Well, thanks for that. That's great updates. Yeah.
Well,
Chuck, what about you? What's coming up for you?
So, on my SIBO route side, on my western side, just published SIBO's Mountain Men the Greek, which is the 3rd book in that set. By the end of the month, the first Theo Starr book will come out. I'm doing a series about a U.S. Marshal who's traveling around. The really cool thing is, while I'm writing him in his present day, 1839, I'm also writing him as an old man because Robert Hanlon, who's one of the consistently in the top 50 Western guys, he and I are doing a collaboration with the old version of my character and the middle-aged version of his character getting on each other's nerves and trying to deal with bad guys. Yeah. And on the horror side, Shadows Without Light, which I just read from today, is coming out at the end of the month. I will have physical copies at Stoker. And Sunken War is coming out probably the month after because I still need 2,000 more words. And then it can go out to editing, but it's already kind of high on the list, so it should go straight through editing pretty quickly.
Cool.
Yep.
Oh, you've been busy, sir. Yeah.
I committed to at least 12 Westerns in the next 12 months. So, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm still writing other stuff. You got to stay ahead of the drinks. You got to stay
I don't think you leave the house very much.
If it's Tuesday, it must be Cowboys. That's the answer. Yeah. Yeah. Randy, what about you? You mentioned 3 books this year. So where are we remind everybody where we are in the course of these 3. Yeah.
Right. So The Only Song Worth Singing is already out. And for what it's worth, just to tie things together, the character of Shiri appears in a novella short story that was in Soul Scream #1 called Rough Beast Slouching. So,
yes. I remember that.
Tie that together. Leave No Trace is the next book coming out in August. That's mid-August. Another dark fantasy with music and musicians involved. And then We Interrupt This Program is scheduled for the fall. That's all I know so far. I think they want to put it out in November, but I literally just got the edits back last week. So I've got to do another pass on the book. And with luck, they'll still be able to put it out by the end of the year. So that's that.
Cool.
But that's the main writing stuff. The Grand World Tour for promoting The Only Song Worth Singing continues at various different events that you can find on my webpage.
So now, Randy, Leave No Trace is not related to The Only Song Worth Singing, other than just being the same genre, or
So here's what I say in that area, which is the 2 are totally standalone. You can read them separately, one before the other, one after the other. At the moment, the only thing that connects them is that characters go to the Fey world, beyond the veil, and they call it the Green Place.
Okay.
So that's the only sense there's any connection. Now I have the idea for a third book that actually ties these things together, but at this moment that is not fully. I have an outline and some chapters, and that's all I got.
Cool.
Okay.
So
all right.
it would be a while. So yes, they are totally separate, but not maybe forever.
But completists should get both and the first issue of Soul Scream Anthology.
Well, of course, absolutely.
Yeah, clearly. What about you, Jim? What I know the thing you have coming up next is StokerCon, so that's probably taking a little of your time, sir.
It's it might be taking up some of my time. I don't actually have anything I can share at this point. I feel like that's become my my mantra these last few months, but I do have quite a few projects cooking, and hopefully inching towards being announced later this year.
Cool.
Hopefully by the summer.
Cool. Yeah. Well, on my end, I have I am blessed and honored that Ellen Datlow has taken one of my stories for her Lovecraftian anthology called Lovecraft's Brood, coming out from Tachyon in October of 2026. So don't hold your breath, but still look forward to it. Yeah. So that's
terrific.
very exciting.
Can you tell us which story will be included?
It's a reprint anthology, so it's the story that I had in the Weird Tales Cosmic Horror issues.
Ah, cool.
Yeah. So she liked that one, so I was very pleased because that one was very near and dear to my heart, and almost all of it almost nearly took place. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah. So that's fun. So O'Brien was kind enough to point out in chat that I'm a Stoker finalist this year as well. So,
indeed,
something may happen in terms of getting an award in June, but I am going to be a finalist forever. That's what I told myself the last time around. I sent myself a bouquet of flowers to arrive the day after I got home from Stoker the first time I was nominated, and it said, "Congratulations on your nomination," just in case. And I didn't win, but I'm still a finalist, So yeah. And then I'm doing one quick thing next week on Wednesday for those in the New York area. I'm reading at Fantastic Fiction KGB Bar that Ellen Datlow and Matt Kressel, the reading series that they cover with Daryl Gregory.
Yeah.
So Matt pointed out we have Daryl and Carol. That's fun to say. So that should be fun. Yeah. So cool. So, and we have a show coming up in July with our Galactic Terrors stuff. We have some of our HWA New York folks are doing a special episode. We have Rob Ottone and John Collins have books coming out, and also guest John Langdon is going to join us for that show. That's a special date, Monday, July 21, for those new book releases. And more details about the rest of our schedule, we will get that out to people as things are nailed up, because sometimes, there's some things we just want to hold back as a secret and tell you later.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's it.
But did you mention that we're due to the conflict with StokerCon in June that we will?
Very good point. Yes, we're not going to do a Galactic Terrors in June because the regular date occurs during StokerCon, and we thought, it'd be fun to do it from StokerCon. And we said no, it's just too busy. We couldn't manage that. Yeah. Jim's brain would go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be a reach exceeding our grasp kind of situation.
A bit too far, yeah. But listen, thanks everybody. It was so wonderful having you all come on, and all of us here are members of the New York chapter of Horror Writers Association, and so that's what helps us coordinate this production going forward. Sometimes we have outside guests in, but it's really fun having our home peeps sharing their words with us. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a great experience.
Yeah, great to see you all.
And thanks for all the great comments, by the way. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for everybody who left comments.
Thanks for everybody for tuning in and watching. And if you're watching this later, I hope as a replay, I hope you get to enjoy the words as well. So thank you.
And sign up for our newsletter and hit like and subscribe.
Boom, boom,
yes,
boom.
Terrific. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks a lot.